rona re le batho ba Alexander ke dintho tse ngata tse etsahalang re ne re thabile re thabetse bridge ena ha e etsa ha e ahua fela ntho e makatsang hona jwale ke ka mokgo ile ya wa ka teng ya wela batho ya lematsa batho honona le koloi le ka sebaka sena koloi ena ke ela mole ntse le mole e tshwatsehile wa tshosa ke le ka tswa haholo ha ra robala ha monate re robetse re utlwile bohloko.
I was behind the taxi that got smashed by the bridge. Yeah, and then we hit the brake. He also tried to hit the brake, but he couldn't. You see, it was too late for him. The bridge started falling from the left to the right. I'm shaking, like, I can't even explain. I don't know what I saw. It was like the devil was here.
On 14 October 2015, at approximately 3:25 in the afternoon, a temporary steel scaffolding structure above the M1 motorway near Grayston Drive in Sandton, Johannesburg, collapsed onto moving traffic below. The structure was not the bridge itself, it was the temporary support system, the scaffolding and steel towers erected during the construction of a new pedestrian and cycle bridge. The bridge was intended to connect the communities of Alexander and Sandton across one of the busiest stretches of highway in South Africa. Murray and Roberts Infrastructure was the principal contractor on the project. They had been appointed by the Johannesburg Development Agency, the JDA, which was acting as agent for the city of Johannesburg.
We just want to start off by saying that we are deeply sorry for what has happened here. Our deepest condolences to the families of the deceased and sympathy to the people that's been injured in this incident. As I stand here in front of you, we still do not know what's the cause of this incident, but I can assure you we will do everything in our power to establish what caused this incident.
SABC News also bumped into a leading economist who was jogging past the accident site.
From an economic point of view, it's a major tragedy as well. But also for the companies involved, there's going to be a big investigation. How does this happen? You know, how did this collapse? What caused it? Because these are big companies involved. And I saw Murray and Roberts' share fell about 7% on the market.
Construction had begun in January 2015. At the time of the collapse, work was still ongoing. The temporary structure had not even been fully completed, yet traffic on the M1 was allowed to flow directly beneath it throughout the construction period. At 3:25 that afternoon, approximately 120 tons of steel came down. 2 people were killed. Adrian Doudnath, a 27-year-old businessman from KwaZulu-Natal, was traveling in a Toyota Fortuner with his wife, his parents, and a cousin. The scaffolding collapsed directly onto their vehicle. He did not survive. Siyabonga Maini, a minibus taxi driver originally from Kwanongoma in KwaZulu-Natal, was also struck. He was survived by 5 children, his parents, and 3 siblings.
Imyeni's family is also devastated and wants answers.
When we got to the scene, we saw him lying on the floor, covered. He was dead. We don't know what injuries he had or what really happened.
What caused the collapse is still not known, and 3 days later, inspectors are still on site.
If there was a negligence of the municipality or the company itself, Murray and Roberts, then we'll take that to the Labour Court after the report has been finalized.
19 other people were seriously injured. The M1 was blocked in both directions. Emergency services responded while afternoon traffic backed up for kilometers in every direction around Sandton. Murray and Roberts issued a statement confirming they were the contractor responsible for the structure. The company had more than 110 years of history behind it. It was at the time one of South Africa's largest engineering and construction groups, listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Within hours of the collapse, that history began to count for very little. Murray and Roberts' shares fell 7.32% on the same day the bridge came down, closing at 11 Rand 15 cents on the JSE.
Their shares came tumbling down shortly after the incident last night.
If something like this happens in Murray and Roberts, it's like death in the family. It is really something that's very difficult for us to deal with. We deal with it as well as we can, but we are deeply saddened by what has happened here.
That single day drop was the largest the stock had experienced since February 2011, but it was what that figure sat on top of that told the real story. Before the collapse, the share price was already down 48% for the year. It had been trading above 12 Rand before the news broke. To put that in broader context, 5 years earlier, Murray and Roberts shares had been worth approximately 4 times what they were on the day the bridge fell. The company was valued at around 5 billion Rand at close of trading on 14 October 2015. The reputational damage was immediate and severe. Murray and Roberts had built major national landmarks. It had been involved in the construction of the train rail network, the Medupi power station, and the Cape Town Stadium built for the 2010 FIFA World Cup. It was a household name in South African engineering. After Grayston, that name became associated with something very different. Public backlash was intense. Social media spread images of the collapsed structure and the vehicles underneath within minutes of the collapse. News of the deaths traveled faster than any official statement could manage. The company's spokesperson confirmed their role on the same afternoon. There was no way to distance the Murray and Roberts name from the event. The Johannesburg mayor at the time, Parks Tau, publicly committed to a full investigation.
With regards to how soon we would have the investigation done, the contractors are on site, the engineers and the scaffolding company are on site. They are doing the necessary investigations to give us confirmation of what the cause of the accident has been. We can confirm that it is the scaffolding that had been erected to enable us to build the bridge that's been built over the M1.
The Department of Labour launched a formal Section 32 inquiry under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The inquiry had its first sitting in February 2016 and continued with significant delays until mid-2018 when it concluded hearing oral evidence. The findings, when they eventually became public, were severe and direct in their focus on Murray and Roberts construction.
Contractors of a temporary bridge which collapsed in Sandton, north of Johannesburg last year, are pointing fingers at each other. This as the Commission of Inquiry started today to look into what caused the support structure of the bridge to fall on the motorway, killing 2 people. Engineering company Murray and Roberts and scaffolding supplier Formscaf both denied designing the structure.
Formscaf was also not responsible for the erection of the false and formwork. That was also undertaken by M&R. And at the time of the collapse, the formwork that had been supplied had not actually been erected in full.
The principal aim of this inquiry is to check the cause of the accident. Secondly, to prevent a recurrence of this accident. We want to see lessons learned. And we also wish to say that there is a strong possibility that we will make recommendation to the NPA for prosecution. That is, should anyone be found liable.
The Department of Labour's final report found that Murray and Roberts, as the principal contractor, had been negligent. The report identified 2 core failures. First, the temporary support structure, the scaffolding and steel towers, had been erected with fundamental design problems. Murray and Roberts had not properly established what load the structure could carry. They had not calculated whether it was strong enough to remain standing. The necessary load analysis was never completed. Critical stabilizing elements that had been planned for the structure were simply not installed. Second, there were no adequate inspections. No one within the Murray and Roberts management system had identified that the structure was defective and unstable before it was used over live traffic. The structure was incomplete, yet the M1 remained open below it throughout the construction period. An independent structural engineer who had worked for the company and followed the inquiry said the situation was comparable to building a table and wanting to put the tabletop up before finishing the legs. Murray and Roberts, the report found, had erected a heavy and unstable structure across a major public road without completing the very elements that were designed to stabilize it. The inquiry also found that Murray and Roberts had not followed the informal design provided by Formscaf, the scaffolding subcontractor. The formal sequence of construction, the planned order in which the structure should be built, had never been drawn up by the contractor. Parts of the structure that Formscaf had specified were omitted entirely. The Department of Labour recommended that 4 institutions be prosecuted. Murray and Roberts was central to those findings. These findings established significant legal and financial liability for the company.
As it was mentioned in the checklist and earlier on, the competency certificates that was outstanding for the scaffold inspectors and for the scaffold erectors was outstanding. So they will do training where they will obtain certificates for training in scaffold directors and scaffold inspectors. Those certificates were not available.
She also told the inquiry that there's no proof that the structure was being checked regularly.
Civil claims were filed by injured parties and by the families of those who had died.
They must pay. And this thing of them saying the investigation is going to take a while. It's just them buying time.
I had the privilege of meeting with the family of one of the deceased, and obviously this afternoon with the family, the Mnyeni family that's present here today. And we would just like to extend our condolences to the family. And I have also indicated to the family that together with the Taxi Association we will cooperate and provide them with the support that they need.
Murray and Roberts retained legal liability for the events even after it later sold off the construction division that had carried out the work. The group issued a public statement to shareholders saying it disagreed with various findings but declined to detail which ones. In the weeks following the collapse, after the bodies of Adrian Dudnath and Siyabonga Mnyeni had been removed and their families had buried them, a cleansing ceremony was held at the site along the M1 motorway near Greyston Drive. The ceremony was held on a Friday in November 2015.
The site of the incident. Public Safety and EMS Chaplain Pindangwenya explains the importance of the ceremony.
The reason why we have so many deaths on the road, it is the neglect of the spirits of the people who died on the road. As a result of that, those spirits, if you are not taken, they cause a shadow. When you drive, you end up not knowing as to how do you get into an accident. It is because of the shadow of the person who passed on, and he was never or she was never been taken traditionally so by their families.
The Johannesburg Metro Police Department diverted traffic on the M1 north and south for approximately 15 minutes to allow the ceremony to take place. Interfaith religious leaders participated in the ceremony. Those who organized it said the purpose was to spiritually cleanse the site where the two men had lost their lives and to help prevent another accident from occurring at the same place. The Greyston Bridge collapse did not happen in isolation. Murray and Roberts was already a company under significant financial pressure before 14 October 2015. In June 2013, the company had agreed to pay a fine of 309 million rand to the Competition Commission. That fine was part of a wider penalty of 1.46 billion rand levied against 15 South African construction companies for collusion and anti-competitive behavior related to the 2010 FIFA World Cup construction projects. Murray and Roberts had committed 17 separate contraventions of the Competition Act. That fine had already done significant damage to public trust in the company and to its share price. The Greyston collapse followed on top of that damage. In late 2016, Murray and Roberts sold the division responsible for the Greyston collapse, Murray and Roberts Building and Infrastructure, to a black-owned consortium led by the Southern Palace Group. That company was renamed Concord Construction in May 2017. The sale of the construction platform was a recognition that the company could not hold on to it. The reputational and legal exposure was too great. The business had also been struggling to compete in a South African construction market that had become extremely difficult, with thin margins and reduced government infrastructure spending following the post-2010 slowdown. But selling the division did not end Murray and Roberts' obligations. As the listed holding group, it retained liability for the events at Greyston Drive. In the years that followed, the company restructured significantly, attempting to pivot its focus entirely toward international underground mining and oil and gas projects. It shed South African construction assets and attempted to rebuild around its offshore operations. It was not enough. By December 2024, Murray and Roberts announced a loss of 1.38 billion rand. In November 2024, trading in Murray and Roberts shares on the JSE was suspended. The company that had once been worth 100 rand per share entered business rescue. A business rescue plan was agreed by creditors in April 2025. In September 2025, Murray and Roberts was provisionally liquidated. The company that had built parts of South Africa's railways, its stadiums, its power stations, and its major urban infrastructure over more than a century had ceased to exist as a going concern. The Greyston Drive collapse was not the only cause. The Competition Act fines, the overall decline in South African construction activity, global project difficulties, and years of accumulated financial pressure all contributed. But 14 October 2015 marks a clear turning point in the company's history. It was the moment when a company already weakened by scandal and by a contracting market faced the full weight of a structural failure that was entirely preventable. 120 tons of steel came down because a temporary support structure was erected without a completed design, without proper load analysis, and without adequate inspection. 2 people died. 19 others were injured. An engineering company with more than a century of history began the final decade of its existence. That is the record.